Good Monday morning on the Rural Radio Network. I'm Alex Makovica, and as we do every Monday, we're visiting with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt, who gets us set up for the week ahead, and this morning, maybe a little bit of a long-range outlook, too. Eric, we start the morning pretty warm temps. We are getting used to these warm temps, but what I hear you say is don't get used to them. It's about to cool down. What can we expect in the week ahead?
Well, we got a few more days of very warm temps. So actually, today's probably going to be the warmest day in the Panhandle. I do think everybody should get at least to the low to mid 60s this afternoon. Reasonably good chance of getting the 70s across west central and south central Nebraska. And just based on that, we seem to kind of keep overachieving on high temperatures. I would guess that most states going to have a reasonable shot at hitting 70 this afternoon. Some places in eastern Nebraska may be limited a little bit by the cloud cover. We are going to have a little bit more cloud cover today than we had over the weekend, at least compared to yesterday. Some might limit temp just a little bit in a few places, but yeah, warmest day, though, will be tomorrow, and I think there's going to be a shot that somebody kind of between Holdridge and Grand Island cracks 80 tomorrow afternoon. Official forecast highs are mid-70s for most of south central and in eastern Nebraska. Might be a little bit hard to get above the mid-70s in eastern Nebraska. We might have a little bit more cloud cover, but yeah, quite warm tomorrow afternoon. A little bit cooler than Panhandle, probably looking highs low 60s to mid-50s as you get further toward the west of the state, but still pretty warm for this time of year. And then cooling off a little bit on Wednesday as we see a little bit more cloud cover and the warmest air kind of shoves over to our east. And speaking of precipitation, there is going to be a chance, and I'm not talking a good chance, but at least a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon, kind of along and east of Highway 77. So if you're in the very eastern side of the state, don't be too terribly surprised if we don't have a quick thunderstorm tomorrow afternoon, early tomorrow evening. There is no real severe risk, but it would be actually kind of nice just to see something fall out of the sky. And it's certainly, I wouldn't mind hearing some thunder. It's been quite a while since we've heard that.
Yeah, it definitely has. Okay, so you bring up a good point. We haven't talked about the drought monitor here in a couple weeks. I imagine, I haven't looked at that lately, but I imagine maybe some degradation in that status. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, we kind of keep seeing degradation around the state. So this past Thursday, we saw quite an expansion of drought and normal dryness across the state. So most of eastern Nebraska now is back in at normal dryness. That's more a reflection of just, we haven't had much moisture the last 30 days. We're more than 30 days past that good moisture that we did get. They're back on January 8th. And if you got to look at the 120, 150 day precipitation departures, we are kind of accumulating deficits. They're not accumulating rapidly this time of year, but with the warmer temperatures, lack of snow cover, we are losing water out of the ground now. Especially how things have thawed out, we are kind of continually just losing a little bit of water. So that's definitely putting us in a sort of precarious situation going into this next spring. Now the good news is, we do have at least some chance of moisture late Tuesday across the eastern side of the state. But, and I know some people don't want to hear this four-letter word, we do have a pretty good chance of snow on Thursday afternoon, probably starting western and north central Nebraska during the day on Thursday, sliding toward the east late Thursday into early Friday across the eastern side of the state. Matter of fact, the ensembles actually show areas along the north of I-80 having at least a reasonable shot at getting 3 inches, and the Highway 20 corridor, say from Valentine over towards South Sioux City, have a reasonably good chance of probably getting, 4 to 6 inches might be their target range. So we are going to have winter coming back later in the week as we seasonally cool, I think, in the week. Not bitterly cold, but seasonally cool. Getting into next week, I think we could get a little bit of a thaw as we head into early next week, maybe getting back to some pretty mild temps. But it does appear that we are going to see some repeated chance of getting some much colder air into this region of the country as we head later next week into the early part of March. And there does appear to be some possibility of getting more precipitation, including rain and snow across the state. The good news is anything that does fall, so if we do this with snow later this week, because the ground's mostly completely thawed out right now with the warm temps we've had lately, that snow will, when it melts, it will go in. So that's the good news. It's not going to be one of those years where, because everything ground's frozen, if it melts, it's just going to kind of percolate a little bit, then mostly, run off or sublimate or something. So that's the good news. We do get some snow.
Yeah. Eric, I grew up on a cow-calf operation where we calved both in February and March. We've done both, and I know better than to think spring is here. And as you've alluded to, maybe some winter storms coming in. But you look at kind of the long-range outlook. Are there chances of maybe one big winter storm to come in? Is it too early to tell? What can you share with us?
Well, right now I'm not seeing anything that would suggest like just a blockbuster winter storm, but there would certainly be the potential for that, I think, toward the end of the month and into March. Right now, I'm not seeing anything that just definitively shows, yeah, you better watch out here in 7 to 10 days. There may be something later next week that's worth watching out for, but that's, getting into the time period where I don't have a lot of confidence in the models, particularly if it's just not, something that's already repetitive. If I started seeing a signal for something like that in the ensembles at this point, I might start getting concerned, but I'm not. But there are indications, just kind of looking a little bit longer range as we get into March, we may get some colder air coming back into the region. So again, we are going to be very warm the next few days, particularly at night. So we may see a few things try to bloom and bud out. But that's going to be, they're going to be sorry they did that because the colder air is coming. And the good news is if we get really cold in March, it's not necessarily, at least especially the eastern half of the state, it's not usually like the really, really brutal cold that we get in midwinter, but it still might be impactful for calving. And I would just kind of caution that I don't think, just because we haven't had anything that resembles winter here for the last at least 2 or 3 weeks, I do think we are going to have more chances of getting more wintry type weather here the next month.
Okay, that brought up one more thing. I was talking to a gentleman after church yesterday, and he said, he made the point, a lot of these crops, a lot of the plants have not had a chance. I believe the phrase he used was to power down this winter. Just no real long stretches of winter. Are you seeing that? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, we have not had any long stretches of winter. I mean, matter of fact, for most of the western half of the state, we are really looking at about record mild temps this winter. We've got temps and snowfall. I mean, it's basically been about one of the mildest winters on record across the western half of the state. Eastern side of the state, maybe not quite at record mild temps, but I mean, we've been generally well above average. We have not had any sustained cold anywhere in the state. Now, it's been different if you go well to the east, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State. They've had this has been one of the coldest winters they've had in a long time. But for anywhere west of the Mississippi River, it's generally been a mild winter. And for us, it's been excessively mild. And really, the last several years have been mild. And, this is with climate change. We are going to see more extended stretches in winter. We are not sustaining cold. That's kind of, some places will, but for the most part, most places in the Northern Hemisphere are not having sustained cold like we used to. And this is kind of an example of that. I do think we are going to have chances for it to be cold off and on for at least another month, but I don't know that we're going to see like a 3-week stretch of not getting above freezing. That just simply gets kind of hard to do as we get into the month of March.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Eric, I appreciate your time. Thanks for entertaining all my questions, and you have a good week ahead.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Alex.